I am sure you're one of those people who has never forgotten anything. Like an elephant who never forgets. You've never forgotten the fine details. You've never forgotten even what day the event happened or where you were or why the event happened, right? Well, like never forgot. Leading Leaders Podcast. 5-minute videos, 5 days a week. I'm J Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast. I'm often asked when I recommend to people that they journal, well, why do I need to journal? I mean, I remember it all, or I have all these pictures on my phone, and I have Instagram, and I have Facebook, and I can always go back and look at the photos that I took that day, or the friends that I was with. I can search it by date. I can go back to my calendar and look it up in my calendar. It's as if people think that their mind is the Wayback Machine, or that social media will always be there. And I'm not sure that you can be confident that either one of those are true. But I can tell you for a fact that in my office, which is right on the other side of this wall, on the top shelf of the bookcase, are journals that I started taking when I was 19 or 20 years old in the Air Force. And they consist of all kinds of stuff. Random thoughts, ideas like inventions that came to my mind, imaginations, fictional stories, dialogues that I had with someone else, my thoughts and meditations, journals from studies that I would be doing. Maybe I was reading a book or sitting through a class or something of that nature. And there are days that my entire mind was just captured in that journal. There are conversations with strangers where someone would walk up and say, I just feel like I'm supposed to tell you this. And I would write it down because here I am 30 years later looking back at some of those things and thinking, it's amazing how they knew 30 years ago what I'm experiencing right now. There were things that I learned then that when I learned them, and by learned I only mean I was made aware of them, that I'm looking at now going, that's not just coming true in my life, but I'm walking through it. It was an idea back then. Now it's part of who I am. And some of those things I realize are not positive things. Some of those are bad habits that I picked up on, that it was a notion back then and could have been curbed or ebbed or said, that's really a bad idea. That's not the direction you want to go. And some of them are good ideas, but they're like the difference between an oak tree and a bamboo tree. Bamboo, if it's watered well and it's in the right environment, it can grow 20 or 30 feet tall in a year's span. An oak tree, on the other hand, starts off as an acorn, and before it's 20 or 30 feet tall, it may be 30 or 40 years. The other difference, though, is that the bamboo tree is usually harvested within a 5-year cycle. It's completely gone, and they start all over again. An oak tree, if left alone, could be 200 or 300 years old. It can be big enough to stop a bus, then build a treehouse in. And so the things that come into our mind, especially when we're young teenagers and young adults and newly married and young parents and young in our education and young in the understanding of the world, some of those things that come into our mind, some of them are brilliant ideas. Some of them maybe even, if you think of someone like an Edison or an Einstein or a Da Vinci, brilliant ideas that no one has ever had before. And these notions, these ideas, these brilliant ideas that are brand new to the world, that no one has ever thought them that way before. We wouldn't be living with electric lights or a combustion engine or an electric car if men like Nikola Tesla had not made a journal of his discoveries and written down his thoughts and ideas. If you go back and look up the study of the first guy who said, I believe the earth is round and here's why. He started with a mathematics study in the direction of the sun because he heard someone say, at such and such a place there is a well. And if you look down in that well in the middle of the day, in the middle of noon, you can see the bottom of the well. And he thought, well, the only way you could do that is if the sun was straight above the earth, but that would also mean that it's only straight above the earth at that point, on that place. And so he began to do some calculations in his head and he eventually traveled there. And how many things have changed because we've discovered the earth is round? Not only that, but he was also able to use mathematic calculations to determine not only is the earth round, but how big around is it? And he was only off by a few meters. And this was centuries ago. See, there may be ideas that come into your mind, new notions, new thoughts, new concepts, new vaccines, new strategic plans, new ways to do things that when they flash through your mind, you have 37 seconds of genius. 37 seconds, that's provable on an MRI. You can watch a new thought come into existence, looks like a little pink ball. And then after about 37 seconds, it just dies if you don't spend any time thinking about it. But if you have a journal, at least you can capture it. And then you can come back later and meditate on that thought and put some more thoughts into it and help it to grow into something else and take it to the next level and brainstorm with other people and make something out of it. And if that thought is about becoming a better you or changing the world, 37 seconds from now, if it's not captured, it's gone. So why do you need to journal? Because your mind is not a wayback machine. The ability to access that stuff is still there. The information is still there, but the inclination and the inspiration to access what you thought about 25, 30 years ago, not so much. If you'll take time to write it in a journal, maybe separate your journals by the types of thoughts. Emotional thoughts or rational thoughts or strategic thoughts or scientific thoughts. Maybe then you'll have the ability to go back and recall those things and think through them again when you have a little more knowledge and wisdom than you had the first time you had the thought. It's just a thought, but it's a powerful one. I'm J Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast for Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day. Now, for our extensive video library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and